Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Disruption Talks, where we invite top experts to discuss digital acceleration, winning strategies, innovation, scaling products, and many more topics. My name is Maciej Markiewicz. I'm a cybersecurity lead at Netguru, and today I have a great pleasure of hosting to Tomas Martinkenas, Director of Security and Privacy at Vinted. Hello, Tomas.
Hello, Maciej. It's a pleasure being here.
Great, and it's a pleasure to have you here. Hello, again, today main topic will of course be related to the security and privacy in digital products, and we will talk about their importance in the business, and the main question that we will try to answer here will be to if security can be considered as a business value for the modern digital products. Okay, so let's start. First question for you, Tomas, is a little bit tricky, let's say, or I would even say controversial. Why does companies like Vinted have a role like yours? Why is it important to have roles like yours?
To answer it briefly, I would say it's to set the scene for a strategy of implementing security and privacy in the organization. But to get more into the context of it is like, first of all, we need to understand the posture, the threat level, the attack vectors that the organization is facing. Understand the regulations seen for it and different things like culture in the organization, etc. And having those in mind, define the program for implementing security and privacy measures in the organization, maturing up the processes, implementing risk management techniques, and many different other processes. So I would say it starts here from understanding where the company is, what is the attack vector, what is the risk exposure, and then bringing the company to the desired level of the risk and security and privacy.
And why it is in current, maybe this is like another tricky question, but why is it important in current state of the world and current situation on the digital world to have security and to analyze security posture, to implement risk management, and why companies like Vinted want to have invest time, money, and other resources to go this path.
So talking about digital companies, there's definitely companies that are like the business model is set up around security or privacy, for example, and they are providing services in that regards. Technologies who are not directly providing services or like tools or anything like that related with security and privacy, in the current environment, in a current digitalized world, it's still meeting those challenges around security and privacy. And basically, the expectation from members, the expectation from the market, from regulators, from your partners, other vendors, for example, is quite high, because we all see different announcements each day, basically indicating about one or another breach, which actually it's not something like regular, but highly affects the company well-being, for example. So in that scene, it becomes crucial for each and every organization. It might differ on the level the organization is working on, for example, the maturity of the organization, even the market. But I couldn't identify any market where this shouldn't be a case to think about security or privacy.
So from what you said and what are my personal observation, the security and the privacy is like the integral part of each business. So because you mentioned regulations and other external and internal factors that are enforcing companies and to implement security strategies and things. So as I see that is the security is integral part of the business. But what is like Vinted approach on the security and privacy from business perspective? Is it can we say that it is considered as a business value for the company, or this is like a thing that needs to be fulfilled, but it's like just external limitation? How is your approach for this?
Yeah, good question. And talking about like e-commerce markets, including Vinted, being for a member, being able to perform transactions securely, meeting the requirements and expectations is crucial. I think it comes from the very historical side of it. Like, let's go back to the Middle Ages and let's see into the like physical markets which were evolving, cities that were evolving back in those years. The main aspect of actually growing was that traders, citizens were able to perform those transactions securely. So they had trust. They know that they will be protected. They at some point they were paying for the protection for their king, for some kind of a castle owner or something like that to defend their goods for sellers and buyers. And the same principle applies nowadays. So nobody wants to perform transactions, exchange goods or something like that in the environment where they feel they can be harmed, they can lose money or other important assets. They definitely want to feel secure about that, knowing that there's credit card information, there's other personal details involved, there is information about transactions, etc., etc. So having all this in mind, I think, and not only think, but from the data that we see, members are actually thinking twice to choose the product or provider or service or e-commerce platform, thinking about security and privacy that the organization can provide to them and safeguard their assets and their information. So talking specifically about our case, it actually quite fairly becomes a business value.
So what you mentioned, the key, the base, the most important keyword here is the trust, because we are protecting assets and values to gain the trust of the customers, right? So that's the key element that is connecting the business and the security in any kind of form, right? Okay, so could you shed some light about your journey in the Vinted regarding the security and how the security strategy and approach to the privacy changed through the years? Did it implemented some kind of changes, or maybe it was evolving during this journey during these few years? How this story looks like? Could you shed some light about that?
Of course. So I remember I have joined Vinted almost 3 years ago. Back in then we had around 400 employees in the company and something around 25 million members. Now we have grown to more than 1,200 employees and more than 50 million members, basically. Twice that in those years. And I cannot say that prior joining Vinted and growing and scaling, the company was not thinking about security or privacy. There were practices already in place. There were services already in place. there were quite a lot of job actually done towards that area. But when I joined, it allowed us to think more from the strategical point of view, and actually to start thinking about expanding those services and improving our posture in the infrastructure and in the market as such. So we started growing our teams. We started from security, governance, and security engineering, because we wanted to split those areas by design and not to have any interest of conflict, and to grow quite rapidly. So we saw that those two fields, even they are very closely related, could be different from hiring perspective, from managerial perspective, leadership, etc. So we established like a process engineer roles for governance team. We established engineering roles for security engineering team. And we started growing those. We started from understanding the posture and then bringing in experts, quite specialized experts in the areas, to actually mature up the organization. And it's a whole variety of fields. It starts from awareness, dedicated trainings, security monthly activities, etc., and goes to quite deeply technical things performed by security engineering teams, and actually inventing our own solutions to the certain problems that we have. But while evolving in security area, we saw that there is a huge opportunity actually bringing privacy to the table and expanding privacy beyond compliance. So we saw that, okay, trust is important. We definitely want to be our platform to be secure, our infrastructure to be secure. We are responsible for a lot of trust that members are giving to us in regards to their data and their transactions. But at the same time, we saw the opportunity that actually we can see privacy beyond compliance. And even though I think that thinking deeply about the compliance, it's actually representing members' posture. It is representing their rights and their freedom towards specific area, and meeting those requirements is actually beneficent for the community, for the members. But investing more into that area of privacy, we saw that would be a perfect contribution to our members' success in the platform. So we established additional teams like privacy governance teams and privacy engineering teams that would be able to launch services dedicated for those specific areas. And not ending up with those, we are investing heavily in expanding the risk management field, especially technological risk management field, because risk management stands for making informative decisions, and we want to be very sharp where we are prioritizing things, super sharp and super focused, because this is what allows us to move fast in the market. So, and we want to be very precise where we are investing and how we are doing that. So for that reason, we are expanding the risk management area, as well business continuity management. There was COVID. Now there's happening war in Ukraine. So there are specific threats that we want to address and foreseen those situations. And as well, another area where we are kind of starting to invest is assurance. So by implementing those procedures, by implementing those technical services, we want to be assured actually and validate that those are working in practice as we want them to be working. So those are kind of the strategical tactical areas that we expanded through these 3 years that allowed us to bring the better product to the market.
Sure. Thank you. You mentioned two very interesting things for me, or This is like the initial for the next question. You mentioned rapid growth and scalability. So in all these areas, it's all about to be fast in developing things, in delivering things to the market, right? It's basically the key value here. And there is still, from my perspective, what I see is still there is a myth about the security, that security is kind of blocker for the business. That is, it is something that is slowing down the businesses. How you managed to fight with those myths, or did you observe something like this, or did you find a similar situation during your journey implementing the security strategies in the Vinted?
Yeah, so most probably there's no expert all around in security or privacy area who wouldn't have spent time thinking about that or actually facing those situations. But I can actually imagine the situation where security or privacy becomes a blocker in business area, and that situation would be where the team is delivering very immature or very untargeted service to the organization. Let's take an example that the organization critical assets are A area, but the team is trying to force and organize all security around the B area, which is not that critical or at least critical in the organization. It takes investment from other areas. It takes the attention from those critical assets, let's say, and it could be actually disturbing business. So that's why we need to be careful about making those decisions. But in most of the cases, there are already techniques and methodologies that allow us to validate like best practices, etc., and to be quite specific and quite targeted on those areas where it is critical for business and super important. And if we are targeting those areas, it's actually, in most of the cases, it will be beneficent for business. Sometimes I believe business cannot understand that fairly simply, or the teams, it's hard for the teams to communicate about that. There could be, or both things going together. But even a small step towards securing your critical assets, or, for example, services that are critical for you, ensuring business continuity, or even slightly raising the awareness between developers, administrators, or the personnel in the company, it gets you to the better posture. It most probably at some point leads you to a situation where it helps to spot a phishing attack. It helps to spot you some anomaly in your laptop that you can report to IT and get fixed and reviewed, etc., etc. So there's this huge bubble of communication here and there, and it's super complex, especially in those businesses that are not directly driven by security or privacy, to understand that impact, talk in the metrics of the business that which are followed by the business, and explain how security and privacy are actually fostering those metrics one or another direction. So I would emphasize the communication point here, and I would say that it's sometimes really, really hard to explain those things in a quite straightforward format.
Yes, so I totally agree with you. So it's mostly about the proper communication and building the awareness of the all stakeholders, and it is like a process. It's not like a quick thing, and there is no quick wins here, but constant learning and constant building the awareness about the why security needs to be implemented and why so constraints are required, basically, is like the key point here to change this way of thinking about the security from the blocker to mostly enabler, because at the end of the day, security is still an enabler for the business, but we need to implement some kind of limitations under this enablement into the business. But to clearly find this other way of thinking about the security is the communication and the awareness. So perfectly understand your point of view. Okay, I have another question regarding quite a different approach, but many of my colleagues asked about that. So I need to ask you also. So it's how Vinted is fighting the frauds around the platform, because we know that around platforms like Vinted or similar, there's always a lot of things happening regarding the frauds, regarding the manipulations and so on and so forth. So how is Vinted approach to fighting these frauds?
Yeah, I need to be very careful in providing the details answering this question, because we have seen situations that not only the security experts but those malicious actors are listening for and gathering that intel and adjusting their techniques. But what I can say in general terms is that there are two ways of kind of two tactics towards that. One tactic is to understand very well the methods that those malicious actors are using, and by that I mean to really invest time into thinking what are the vulnerabilities in your platform, how those could be exposed, and in most cases doing that proactively by penetration testing, for example, or just thinking from the business perspective and really gathering that information from the experts that are working in certain areas. An example could be that sometimes in our organization we have those like hackathons which we organize kind of inside the company, and in all of the cases we have a theme about vulnerabilities around our platform, where we gather experts from different fields like shipping, payments, etc., which they know their product, they know the area very well, and put them together with the security personnel and get this collective mind to get working towards understanding. All right, what's the way of exposing that? What's the way of exposing that? Are there any options here and there? And gathering that information and then using it to prevent those kind of attacks. So really trying to collect as much intel as possible. And another way on actually trying to fix those problems if they are already in production, and in the best case scenario, trying to catch those basically in the very early of implementation stage. So for that reason, we are working a lot towards awareness in the organization, showing how the vulnerabilities can be exposed, how damaging one or another attack could be, that developers or designers even already thinking about the feature that they are working on, or the connections between those features, would have that somewhere in mind and would come to security and privacy team for consultations. Like, okay, maybe you can check that out. Maybe we can do a testing on that and double check before going to the production on that. So we are trying to foster that service to be as easier approachable for the teams as possible. And as we discussed in the previous question, not to be a blocker here, but actually to be very precise and able to provide those services. But yeah, we are quite investing into that, and we are sharing more information in the closed groups where we can validate the attendees, and this is where we could and we would be definitely open to exchange information and techniques with other e-commerce sites on how we are working towards that.
Cool. Thanks. So it sounds like very complex task to fight with those frauds around the platform, because from my perspective it sounds like you're implementing not only not only the technical solutions, but it is a mixture of the technical solution design, but also the building the awareness, right? So I got a very interesting question from the audience, from the comment sections, regarding basically the awareness, because you mentioned that awareness is also the part of these fighting strategies. But what about the awareness of the clients? And here we have a first question from Agnieszka. Do you think that companies such as Vinted should have a responsibility to increase clients' awareness for security practices in order to minimize the impact of the phishing, frauds, and other this kind of attacks? What do you think about that?
Yeah, so there are two different ways into looking that, and we have products around the market actually working towards those directions. One direction could be that a company or a product tries to centralize security and privacy services as much as possible, leaving member into position that we will do everything we can around your security and privacy, so you don't need to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
And another kind of direction of trying to achieve the same goal, that member wouldn't be harmed anyhow, is trying to do the same, but as well investing some of the time into raising an awareness to the members, vendors, partners, or whoever we are dealing with, and kind of giving some responsibility to the member on actually spotting that, understanding that there could be a threat, kind of reporting that, etc. Most probably there's no perfect solution either in one way, so there's something in between where companies are doing everything to secure their members, while at the same time asking them to be aware and to spot those anomalies. And because it might be just a new technique, a new methodology that malicious actors are using, that the company simply is not aware, and members can just spot it while using the product. But in practical terms, my answer would be yes, that in general, companies that are ethical and responsible, they need to raise the awareness in the market about security and about privacy. And in Vinted, that's what we are trying to do as well. So every time we see a new pattern and a new attack technique, or that the trends just generally are increasing in the market, we notify our members. We give a brief heads up, reminding about those threats, while at the same time thinking about the privacy. We even try to kind of bring that field of privacy beyond compliance to our members, kind of giving them the glance and view of the responsibilities that we have and the rights that they have towards their data. So I think that it is a responsibility of ethical companies to do so.
Okay, thanks. I'm sharing this point of view. From my perspective, it is crucial that companies that have that contributing to the society, building their digital product in delivering the services, are responsible to provide some kind of awareness, techniques, to building awareness techniques of the customers, of the clients, etc. Because companies have this power to educate, to enforce, or build business processes in the way that are increasing the awareness and provide the security. Secure by design approach to handle the business models. And here is another questions, but more general. What do you think about the current state of the privacy and security, in the global market or global IT services? Because from my perspective, companies are starting to see privacy and security as business value. But from my observation, it is very often driven by by the incidents, security incidents, like very high volume security incidents, phishing campaigns. From last year's, it was like pandemic, current geopolitical situation. So very bad things need to happen to force companies to change their mindset about the security and increase investments in that. This is my personal observation. But what do you think? It is how this approach is changing from your perspective, from your observations. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would start from two perspectives. There's kind of attacker's perspective and defender's perspective of it. And we all know the saying that attacker needs to be successful once, while the defender needs to be successful basically all the time. And when we look from the malicious attacker's perspective, they are adopting new technologies, they are adopting evolving technologies, and it becomes super hard to defend yourself from those advanced technologies. And that requires so much investment into that, starting from educational sector, which a fun fact is actually from couple of analyses of the last year is the most attacked sector in cyberspace. Starting from that sector, even I think we are quite limited in capabilities and the capacity to prepare students or the amount of knowledge that we need in the market towards that direction. It's universities and different organizations issuing trainings towards that direction are kind of getting to the speed already. We can see first study programs in the universities, first graduates from universities who have graduated in cyber defense area, like penetration testing or etc. And that's really nice. And they are getting experience already in the market and kind of they can already educate others. So that's really nice. And it most probably at some point it will evolve in both capacity and capabilities. But awareness still needs to be raised between decision makers, I would say, because as you mentioned, it kind of we as an experts, we can always feel that we get more attention after the incident, and it kind of feels very natural, like everything is calm, everything is okay, there's some kind of a noise of attacks going in, but nothing very much disturbing, and then suddenly something super disturbing happens. So definitely, and that position is very, very bad to be in. So you definitely don't want to be in that position again. But thinking of that in advance, seeing others, examples of others, getting the push from the market, these things are, I think, guiding the decision makers into investing more into not being only reactive in that field, but preventive or even resilient towards attacks. And I personally see more and more companies being proactive in that area because of different reasons, most probably that we discussed. But definitely there is still more of the organizations that are more reactive towards that area. And we, as an experts, we do see that when, for example, a new, especially zero-day vulnerability occurs, a new attack vector, like we had with the ransomware attacks, for example, etc., that it just goes straight, and just very limited amount of companies are actually can feel safe about that because they have those preventive mechanisms. And we are getting here, I think, back to the beginning of our discussion, being able to show that value to the business and directly to the members or to the partners. That what kind of closes the loop of investment, not giving the opportunity, or at least limiting the opportunity of this brutal exposure of attack for the business.
So it's again all about the awareness. Uh, so I agree with your approach, but the final thing I think that that can summarize this part is that awareness is the key to changing the way of thinking about the security, and to change way of how to approach the budgeting these things, because all at the end of the day the security needs to be some kind of cost, and how to this is the way to change way of thinking, that it is not the cost spent on nothing, but we are still investing in our business, and we are still working on improve the general privacy and build the trust of our clients, right? But you mentioned another thing that I would like to ask, because apart from the incidents, another driver for changing the cybersecurity landscape and basically privacy landscape is our regulations like GDPR, California Customer Privacy Act, and many more. We are observing the increased number of the regulations that are appearing on different different states, different part of the world. But basically, there are even more regulations on the market currently, and they are enforcing companies to change the way of thinking about the security. And my question here is, what do you think? It is a good way to enforce privacy from the legal perspective, or we should try different approach? Because there's always the thing that law and external regulations are not so precise and not so in sync with the current state of the technology. What is your take on that?
My take on that is, if compliance applied just kind of blindly and directly, it might miss the point actually, and it might be a very hard selling point in the organization. But if we try to look beyond that compliance, what is actually meant by that one or another point of regulation, and so what's behind that, and what value it can actually bring to our members, and maybe we can use that functionality, process or whatever, towards kind of even growing the maturity, like educating our members about that right, giving them that freedom to choose, etc., etc., like thinking from the perspective not that we are just blindly marking the checkbox, but what the impact it actually makes, gives us the opportunity of for us as a security experts and privacy experts to sell that point in the organization and represent our members, because this is what those regulations are trying to do. But I can definitely agree that there are points that are just not in sync with the actual stages of technologies that might be outdated, even that they are fairly new as a regulations. We all know how much time it takes from the drafting it and actually implementing that, and technology evolves drastically. So there's always a good chance and opportunity to have those connections with the regulatory authorities to be able to provide that feedback. If possible, at the very early stage, like when those documents are drafted, and big players have that opportunity, and I think that's possible even for let's say smaller companies who has team members working as representatives in different organizations, or even when the regulation is already in place and applied, we still should have that communication line with the regulatory authorities, helping them, indicating that it doesn't make sense anymore. We need to change something. That the market is like running different direction, and to have that open chat and possibility to provide the feedback and discuss openly with the authorities that okay, we don't see much of a value in that, but we want to do good for our members. We want to deliver a good product. We want to ensure that their rights are followed. So maybe there's something that we can collaboratively work towards together. So I would, answering that question, summarizing it, I would really see a benefit of looking beyond the legal regulation and actually thinking from the perspective what it brings to our members and how we can maybe even at some point sell this as a functionality because our competitors don't have that. It might need education and awareness towards members, but what we see that like members' maturity and awareness and understanding is growing super fast. They are interested in technologies, they are interested in regulations, and they know their rights, and we need to respect that.
But still, from my observation, in many cases, the fines included in the regulations are good, let's say, driver motivator for companies, because in many cases, like when we are talking about budgeting and selling the security, paying for that, we don't see any return of the investment in very like clear way. But providing the examples of the fines for specific violations, for specific vulnerabilities and issues with security is bringing this clear visibility of the potential cost of the problem on the table. So there is still part of these regulations that are providing not so nice, let's say, not so beautiful tool, but still a tool to security representative to show the different solution and different version of the reality when we will not invest in that, right?
Right.
So I don't have personally clear statement on that, which are what regulations are good or not. Probably this is not like clear answer for that, because we have like pros and cons on this approach. But still, I need to admit that still regulations are some kind of changing our mindset, our landscape in a bad or good way, or in both ways. Okay, I have a few questions from the audience, from the comment sections. Maybe we'll post the first one about the product companies. Let's try to answer. Okay, so the first question I would read. Product companies are increasingly becoming a target of attacks and hackers. Usually, the phishing attacks are aimed to the employees and contractors in order to gain access to the infrastructure and databases or company records. How do you think commerce companies like Vinted consider and remediate those risks to both employees and customers' data?
Yeah, a good question, and targeting very the attack vector that is used in a lot of times. Actually, the most probably the very popular one, the most popular one.
Yeah.
I would start from that there is no like a silver bullet for that. That there are so many ways. Like social engineering can be such a brilliant and just sophisticated thing that it's super hard to defend yourself from that. It can. I have seen just brilliant examples of it going straight forward like a train. But there's always more complex kind of view towards that, and I would say the breaking point here is that the responsibilities in the organization should be thought through when it comes to security and privacy. So there are certain rules, requirements, procedures that employees in the organization need to follow, and they will be best in one or another area. Let's take a programmer, administrator. whatever of the respective area that he is working on, you will not be able to find a security expert which is good in all programming languages. You will not find a security expert that is good in all the systems that you are using. No, most probably you have administrators, you have like many different roles taking care of that. And awareness for those roles is crucial. So those roles need to be aware of their responsibilities, of their contributions to the security posture. And definitely then there is a security team who is able to provide dedicated services to the organization. Security team who is able to own and provide those dedicated services. And there is a huge value in those services because no other team could do that or could scale that. And for those kind of attacks and for those kind of vectors, it's important to definitely educate people, train people on that. There could be a service that security team is providing, like regular fake phishing emails, kind of just getting the alert, like kind of learning by doing for the employees, learning by spotting them. Definitely there are like awareness experts could think of many different ways how to involve into those activities, maybe some awards like badges or something like that. There could be this competition factor into it. So there are ways of kind of making it fun and attractive. But then there is this technological part. And definitely security experts who are specializing in analyzing that threat information, what social engineering attacks are used, how they are used, can provide the guidance or even own the process or tools, spotting those phishing emails at the very, very early stage, even like just blocking them that they do not reach the end user at all. Which way is cheaper? Most probably an awareness part of it, but without awareness and kind of technological solutions into it, the company might leave very much exposed to those kind of attacks.
Okay, thank you for this answer. And we have another question from the audience, quite related with that. Let's post it. Do you have any practical advices for C2C platforms, operators, or e-commerce owners regarding organizing, monitoring, and incident response teams? What are the must-haves for such companies?
Yeah, it most probably depends on the company size. It might be it might be a case for a bigger company to have a dedicated incident response team that is operating 24/7, that have the tools and the right technologies in place to deal with those kind of situations. For a smaller companies, there is always if talking about customer-to-customer platforms, in most of the cases, there's always something on duty, like SRE teams, infrastructure teams, something like that, taking care that the product is actually up and running. So there's a possibility to kind of use that opportunity for like expanding the responsibilities with the incident response, because as we know, not only like the incident root cause could be not the malicious actor, it could be some error, it could be some there could be like many different aspects of it. So I would say having it is crucial. It just depends on the organization side and kind of this business opportunity here. If it is a smaller company, most probably we can think of educating the people that are on duty and having them as the first responders, escalating it to the security team. If the company is bigger with the more customers, etc., incidents are happening constantly. So there should be something dedicated towards that.
Great, thank you for the answer. And I have a very last question. Let's say very question regarding that we call the magic wand. We talked about a lot about education, about the awareness of the users, customers, about the business representative awareness and technical teams. So a lot of awareness on different levels. And the very last question is a magic wand question. If you could cast a spell that allowed you to provide education on specific topic to all 20 years old in the world, what would it be? What would it be? And what do you want them to learn? And why it is a security? Or maybe
Yeah.
less.
I would go most probably kind of surprisingly not on the field of security or privacy, but I would vote for psychology, for people to better understand themselves and their motives and actions. Because as a security experts, definitely we all have faced situations when we are able to identify those malicious actors that are targeting us. And in most of the cases, they are actually young people who do not understand even the consequences of their actions. But it always is true that they are very smart people. But there was some kind of a situation or path of events that led them to use their skills towards malicious actions, not towards something good that they can create. Maybe if and it's always such a pity, to see so much talented people actually doing something wrong, something bad towards other people. When you think of what these capabilities could do, and maybe if they are able to think twice, understand better, and have those opportunities to do good instead of bad, we just had less of those damaging attacks and vectors in the field.
Great, thanks. Thanks for that. That was quite interesting point of view on the topic. So, but basically, it is still related with the security. But
Yeah.
I'm very interested to think about the psychological part of the education and how these affect our society in the future. So, thank you very much. Basically, that's all question for now from my side. Thank you for your time. Thank you for our discussion. It was a very pleasure to talk with you, to meet you here. And that's all for today. Thank you, and I encourage you to observe our disruption talks. Next episode will appear soon. And thank you very much, and bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.